So today is quite a big day, I think, in the whole engine story. I'm going to put the engine back together again. In this case, I'm going to put the cylinder heads back on, and then I'm going to test it. I'm going to try and test it with my Leakdown tester to see if, like, the air escaping is the same across all the cylinders, and I might even try different piston positions, because some of the pistons, as we know, I have like different kind of wounds in different places. And yeah, so let's get into it.
It says the machine.
First thing to do is a bit of butchery. So I'm going to do 10 at a time. I'm going to do one cylinder head at a time. So I'm going to get 10 of these washers, which go between the nuts and the block and the cylinder head. And then the idea is, I think, according to the workshop manual, that you rough up one side to make it grip the cylinder head, and then as you tighten it will slide over the top. I guess that stops the damage to the cylinder head. The interesting thing with these washers is that they've either come out of the factory like it, or they've been torqued down so that they're kind of like tapered. I'm not sure if you can see. So there's one side that's fatter than the other. So I'm just going to copy that and do the bigger side with this emery cloth that I have that's 100 grit. It doesn't seem terribly healthy, but I think it's got to be done. I equally don't know if these nuts washers are useless because they're tapered or if they're fine, but it strikes me that if you've got a bigger surface area that's rough, it's less likely to move on the block, on the cylinder head. So I'll do 10 like that. Didn't take very long. We'll see how it goes. And so here's the cylinder head, 5, 6 and 8 and 7, of course. I'm just going to check it. The stuff protruding and some. It's pretty flat. I mean, I've cleaned it once already. It's so difficult to know if I scrape that. Still some bits coming off. But some of it, I think, is staining, particularly given there's the corrosion that we saw previously there, and the corrosion here between the two. I guess we're most worried about around the fire ring. It's 1200 grit. This is a bit depressing, I guess, on this cylinder. I don't know if you can see, but there's machining marks. Not Porsche machining marks, this one here. And there's a big semicircle where it looks like the cutter was misaligned. I'm gonna take some 600 grit to it just to see if I can even it out a little bit. You can you can't really feel it with your fingernail, to be honest. I think it's just a little bit, but it seems to have crushed down where the fire ring goes round. Or the compression ring, or whatever we call it in England. We'll just go over it with 600 and see what happens. That's all I'm going to do. You can see machining marks. I'm just going to have to try it, see what happens. I can do the mad maths on wasting a set of gaskets. Just doing a final run on the head bolts, on the studs, to make sure they run nicely. These ones all look in reasonable condition. But we'll see, because I'm going to use the torquing method to do up the bolts so that I know what torque they're at, because I think for these studs, the angle method might not be optimal, because I think these ones stretch. And then if they're old and they've stretched already, then if you use the angle method, you might not get the right reading. So we'll see. All a bit risky. So this is today's dilemma. Head gaskets and the thickness thereof. This is obviously the old gasket, and this is the gasket that came in my gasket set. It's a Victor Reinz one. I think they're both Victor Reinz actually. And this one, the part number is 928-104-36106, which is a 1.1mm gasket. This, I think, is also a 1.1mm gasket. And the problem I have is that the cylinder heads, which I'll show you in a bit, have been machined at some point in their life, I think, and so the dimension is that they give you in the workshop manual is smaller than it should be to accommodate a 1.1mm gasket. And the repair gaskets, which are 1.4mm, are really, really difficult to get, it seems. Well, particularly in the UK. I guess you can buy some special ones on long order, but they don't seem to be available off the shelf. And the only ones I've seen are in the States, which I'll have to do if it transpires that I do actually need a 1.4mm gasket. So, okay, let's. I'm going to measure this now. Let me get the caliper zeroed. Oh, it's so cold in here. I think it's -2. The battery's not working properly. All right. And then this dimension is like, let's say 23.75.7. I'm going to say that's 23.7. And that's cylinder head 1. I've just marked it 1. Let's measure the other one. Well, there is a machined bit at the other end. Let's try that. It's probably out of camera. Again, 23.7. I'm going to do it 23.7 to 23.8. And somewhere in that region. I can't be any more accurate than that. Okay, let's try cylinder head 2. Right, so this time, just make sure that it goes back roughly to 0. Okay, and then it's how, but see that? That could be 23.8, I'm saying, on that one. 23.8. Yeah, I can't force it. 23.8, and then at the other end, which you can't see, (23.86). 8.4. I can't force it. So it's definitely, it's not, because it's not perfect surfaces. But I can't in any angle make it. Yeah, I'm going to say that one's 23.8 to 23.9. Okay. Right. So the workshop manual, I'm going to put a picture into the video maybe showing this, so that the A dimension on this, right, so that's the A dimension, and on my cylinder heads A equals this. Now for a 1.1 gasket, it says it's anywhere between 23.9 to 24.1 millimeters. And then a 1.4 is 23.6 to 23.8. I guess we're rounding between the two. So mine's borderline, right? It's somewhere. This one is close, somewhere in that hinterland. Number one is definitely below this. It's in this limit here. The upshot of all that is that using a thinner gasket that's on an out of tolerance head, so the head has been machined beyond the limit for the thin gasket, I run the risk of having higher compression than normal, which could either mean more power, or it could mean more leaks, or it could mean that the engine becomes an interference engine. I don't think it becomes an interference engine, but I guess it's not good having more compression than the engine was designed for, but it all seems a bit nebulous. And I haven't got a 1.4 millimeter head gasket, so it's all going to go back together with a 1.1, and we'll see where it gets to. Hopefully we'll have more horsepower. Let's think about that. Just to check on the head gasket, to the front, it's the top, and that's the upper, I think, in German. Right, let's get it on. Well, kind of fits. It's going on. Goes over the roll pin. But these holes are slightly too small. I think maybe I should clean these spigots a little bit more. So looking more closely at these holes, they're not round, they're kind of trilobular, I guess is the phrase. They're not, so I think they're designed to pull down with the head and actually finally locate it accurately. Okay. I guess I've just got to put the head on the top and go for it. One final look at the bores before we put it back together again. Another one of the risk points. But what I've noticed is that they do keep the lubrication on them. That's still very lubed after sitting. I'm just gonna have to go for it. Enough procrastination. Right, that's gone home. Ooh. Okay, it's the cylinder head, it's the right one. Okay, I guess we'll start putting the bolts on. Got all the washers in, that's number 10. All face down with the roughened side down, and then the nuts. So I'm just going to put a tiny amount of oil on, and I'm going to put them so that the numbers are face up to make sure that we the best chance of, but I'm going to do it onto this, best chance of low friction. Okay, so I've got the torque wrench set to 20, and I now need the, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Keep that there, just as a memory aid. Right, and I'm going to mark them with a bit of Tipp-Ex every time I've done one. So number 1 to 20. Eight, 9, and 10. Right, so the third is 85. Okay, that's 1, done 1. 3 dots. This is kind of scary. This is some serious torque. And 10. Okay, so we need to leave it there for 30 minutes. Alright, it's half an hour later. So the torque wrench is still set to 85. So So each one of these I'm going to do 1/4 of a turn and then torque back up. So we'll start at 6 o'clock. And we'll go 1/4 of a turn. That's interesting, so that's another like 5 degrees.
Quarter and it.
Okay, so they all should be 85 now. And 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Alright, let's just triple check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so cylinder head's on, it's all torqued up. As I've said before, it's got a thin gasket, and I'm pretty sure it's okay with the thin gasket, but I'm just now going to turn it over on the crank to see if it goes all the way. There aren't any spark plugs in, so it shouldn't generate any compression at this time. Well, that's nice. He unplugs the... That's really nice. Let's do that again. Before I do this, I should have put a little bit of engine oil down each one. That's what I'm going to do before we have some fun with the popping. Here's my tester. Never used one of these before. The main issue likely is the connection here. I don't know if that's compatible with what I've got on my... Oh, it is, I think. So this is now my preferred technique for testing the cylinders. At the moment you can see that that's on about 33, and then each time I do the test I make sure that is in the middle so it's consistent. And these are the results. So this bank was the one that was pretty honestly worn, and they're 33%. And then on this side, the two suspect cylinders, the one with the scoring and the one with the pitting on the top, that one is a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's significantly more given how shit the testing equipment is, but it's an indication, and then the others are fairly normal. And that one you can expect to be 33 because it's at the bottom of the stroke, and so I don't know what effect the pitting has, because it's really difficult to get it to the top dead centre, which I guess is a good thing. So what do we make of that? Looks like we have an indication that cylinder 5 is lagging a little bit behind all the rest of the cylinders. And let's not forget that although the percentage points seem quite small, that's still 10% based on this limited test. It's a bit of a crappy test really. I'm not even sure if all the pistons were at top dead centre when I did it. I mean, certainly I think number 5 was, which should be a realistic representation. But then the test was at really low pressure. It was at like 2 or 3 bar, I guess. And like in real terms, it's nothing compared to the compression the engine would see when it's being used. And so I guess if we were to extrapolate that 10% to say 180, that would be, if all the cylinders were 180, that would be 162 on the bad cylinder, which is bad, but it's not really, really bad. I mean, it's far from optimal. And so I don't know how to extrapolate these Leakdown tests to what happens in reality. So I guess we've still got some unknowns. And on top of that, we've got the thin gasket thing, which is another worry point, I guess, putting extra stress on the engine. And then, of course, there's all the normal stuff, like the studs that are not in the first flush of youth, I would say. And just my my ability to strap it down and the crapness of my uncalibrated torque wrench. Lots of good stuff in terms of jeopardy in there. And we're just going to continue, I think, and continue building it, get it in the engine and see what happens in real life. Get it in the engine, I mean get it in the car. And 180, I meant PSI.